Good morning, everyone. So this is our recap from our Bible study night. I'm going to try to do a better job of keeping these brief and maybe a little bit more easier to follow for you guys. And so last night we talked about death in Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and most of 9. The preacher really deals with this topic of death and talked about how it's important for Christians to really have a healthy understanding of death and the role it plays in our lives. I think oftentimes we don't have a good view of death. There's maybe a lot of fear or anxiety surrounding death or things of this nature. But the preacher points us to a couple of things. We have three things actually that we talked about and how we view death. The first is one is death can make life meaningless. That's the first thing. Two, death can make life meaningful. So death can either make life meaningless or can make life meaningful. And thirdly, death actually answers the question of evil. What do we do with evil? Why would God allow evil? That sort of thing. So let me read a quote from the commentary series that we've been recommending that you study along with this, your teens and you and your family. This is what the author says. That is Solomon's point here in Ecclesiastes. It does not matter how wise you are, how much money you make, how much comfort you have, how successful you are, how religious you are, how cleanly you live your life. Death is the great equalizer. So it's something that all of us face, regardless of our belief system, regardless of how we live our lives. Death is inevitable in one sense. And so the preacher, Solomon in Ecclesiastes, wrestles with this and says, listen, if all there is just this life under the sun, if there's nothing beyond this, if there's nothing greater than this, if there's nothing beyond the grave, that under the sun is all that there is, this world, all we can see and taste and touch and sense is all there is, then death makes life meaningless. We can be successful, we can do the best that we can and all of these things, but it doesn't matter because you're just going to end up worm food. You can live a righteous life, live a good, clean life, you can prosper, all these things, you can do good for other people. It doesn't matter, you're going to become worm food. So death then can make life meaningless if this is all there is. Now to the other point in the latter part of the chapter. Death can make life meaningful. Because when we realize our days are numbered and we realize our purpose here in life, we realize that everything that's been given us is given to us. God has given it to us for us to enjoy. And we realize that there's something beyond the grave. There's something, or someone rather, greater than ourselves, than each and every single moment, each and every single day that we have is a gift. And the preacher encourages, so live it with all your might. Do it with all your might. Echoing a little bit 1 Corinthians 10:31, whatever you do, whether in word or in deed, do it all to the glory of God. That's our purpose. That's what gives us meaning, that each day is one step closer to eternity, and that each day, the way that we live our lives matters for eternity. There's something bigger, something greater than us. We're not just nice to people for the sake of being nice or making their lives, but we're nice to people, we're kind to people, we love people because we're a part of something much bigger than ourselves, and we want to point people to the glory of the gospel and the glory of God himself. And then the third thing that we talked about, death actually makes sense of evil. We asked the question, why do the wicked seem to prosper? The preacher asks this question in chapter 8. He says the wicked will receive their just punishment in the end. All right, we know that in the end, God's going to judge the living and the dead. He's going to come back and judge everyone, whether those who believed him and those who didn't are all going to stand before God one day, and the wicked will be cast out from him for eternity. So whether in this life or the next, God will give due justice and repay everyone for their deeds. The good news for us is this. So either that wickedness can be dealt with on this side of eternity, on the cross, where Christ shed his blood for our sin, or it will be dealt with when Christ comes again, or when we die in eternity. will be dealt with. Evil will be paid. So the cross is good news because it means forgiveness for sinners. And it means justice for all. So if you're in Christ, if you put your faith and trust in Him, then there's an eternity waiting for you. And there's something much greater beyond the grave. And there's much more to live for in this life than just stuff or money or success or power. If you don't think all that's real, if there is no God, if there is no Creator, if there is no heaven, no hell, then life is meaningless. So is death. But in Christ, there's no fear in life or death, because not even the grave could hold Jesus. And He's the one that gives us purpose and meaning. So the question that I left them with, and I challenge you to kind of work through these things with your family: how can the gospel provide more meaning to your life? Like, what ways can you live each and every single day as a gift, and that you're a part of something much greater and much bigger than yourself? And that the gospel invites us into that, and that there is life beyond the grave. I invite you, encourage you to kind of process that question together as a family, and hopefully you find that encouraging, that we don't have to fear death, that maybe there's some anxiety around death that for you and for your kids, but the comfort is that each day death actually brings us into eternity, right? And so we have that to look forward to, but also we don't have to fear it because we know that death doesn't have the final say.